I'm your host, named Mohammed Rafi, and here is my YouTube channel, Zamir Universal. Now, what you see with the change, everyone who has been talking about January 20th, when there will be a handover of one outgoing Sleepy Joe, a worst president in the United States of America, between a Donald Trump and another bad actor who comes on the stage after the one. See what now this fellow has done and how he is changing the balance in the whole world. And he is basically anti-Muslims, anti-Islam. And in his first term, if you remember, he banned all the Muslim countries and then he had to swallow his spit back. Because when he got slaps on his face and ass, and he was beaten from every aspects, and I mean he was done this because he had no vision. The man is impulsive, the man is dangerous, much more dangerous than Adolf Hitler. And this is the misfortunate and I think a curse on the American public to have, the leaders in the last, I think 20 to 30 years, they never had actual, a president. They always elected a stooge. And in, the back, the one who was pulling their strings of these puppets has always been an Israeli prime minister or Israelis or the lobby. Now, no matter what you do, it is too late, too late. Now, what can Bird do? You can see for yourself how he has spitted and abandoned Europe, how he doesn't give a damn to NATO. Even previously, if you remember, he never wanted the NATO to be, exist, because he wanted that they've been only, contributing just a scratch, less than 2%, where they were supposed to contribute 5% for the defense for this, the North Treaty Organization. And then he keeps boasting that we have a big ocean, behind the other countries that no one has ever invaded. But you have invaded. You have financed Al-Qaeda. You have financed ISS. You have listened and you've been a slave of Apex or Friends of Israel. You have passed laws that is anti-Semitism. There is no laws for anti-Christians or anti-Muslims. You spare no opportunity to spit on the face of all the Muslims of the world when you talk about Islamic terrorism. Why the hell you don't talk of Hindu terrorism when you know that Narendra Modi is known as a butcher of Gujarat? You did the same thing, had a war criminal standing by your side, Netanyahu, and you had no compassion for the real human life, human children, human women, and you don't even give a damn.
So the NATO enlargement, as you know, started in 1999 with Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic. And Russia was extremely unhappy about it. But these were countries still far from the border. And Russia protested, but of course to no avail. Then George Bush Jr. came in. When 9/11 occurred, President Putin pledged all support. And then the U.S. Decided in September 20th, 2001, that it would launch 7 wars in 5 years. And you can listen to General Wesley Clark online talk about that. He was NATO's supreme commander in 1999. He went to the Pentagon on September 20th, 2001. He was handed the paper explaining 7 wars. These, by the way, were Netanyahu's wars. The idea was partly to clean up old Soviet allies and partly to take out supporters of Hamas and Hezbollah. Because Netanyahu's idea was there will be one state, thank you, only one state. It will be Israel. Israel will control all of the territory. And anyone that objects, we will overthrow. Not we exactly, our friend, the United States. That's U.S. policy until this morning. We don't know whether it will change. Now, the only wrinkle is that maybe the U.S. will own Gaza instead of Israel owning Gaza. But the idea has been around at least for 25 years. It actually goes back to a document called Clean Break that Netanyahu and his American political team put together in 1996 to end the idea of the two-state solution. You can also find it online. So these are projects, these are long-term events. These aren't, is it Clinton, is it Bush, is it Obama? That's the boring way to look at American politics, as the day-to-day game, but that's not what American politics is. As you know, Viktor Yanukovych was elected in 2010 on the platform of neutrality. Russia had no territorial interests or designs in Ukraine at all. I know, I was there during these years. What Russia was negotiating was a 25-year lease to 2042 for Sevastopol Naval Base. That's it. Not for Crimea, not for the Donbass, nothing like that. This idea that Putin is reconstructing the Russian Empire, this is childish propaganda. Excuse me. If anyone knows the day-to-day and year-to-year history, this is childish stuff. Childish stuff seems to work better than adult stuff. So, no designs at all. The United States decided this man must be overthrown. It's called a regime change operation. There have been about 100 of them by the United States, many in your countries, and many all over the world. That's what the CIA does for a living. Okay? Please know it. It's a very unusual kind of foreign policy. But in America, if you don't like the other side, you don't negotiate with them, you try to overthrow them. Preferably covertly. If it doesn't work covertly, you do it overtly. You always say it's not our fault. They're the aggressor. They're the other side. They're Hitler. That comes up every 2 or 3 years. Whether it's Saddam Hussein, whether it's Assad, whether it's Putin, that's very convenient. That's the only foreign policy explanation the American people are ever given anywhere. Well, we're facing Munich 1938. Well, we're facing Munich 1938. Can't talk to the other side. They're evil, implacable foes. That's the only model of foreign policy we ever hear from our mass media. And the mass media repeats it entirely because it's completely suborned by the U.S. government. I begged the Ukrainians, and I had a track record with the Ukrainians. I advised the Ukrainians. I'm not anti-Ukrainian, I'm pro-Ukrainian completely. I said, save your lives, save your sovereignty, save your territory, be neutral. Don't listen to the Americans. I repeated to them the famous adage of Henry Kissinger, that to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. Okay, so let me repeat that for Europe. To be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal.
Democratic countries actually don't invade their neighbors. Democratic countries don't harbor terrorists. Democratic countries don't use weapons of mass destruction.
What is so special about the people in the United States? Nothing is special. They are people just like you and me. I don't want to hear an American president ever again lecture me about human rights. Why?
100%.
Yeah, because they have been sending 2,000-pound bombs to the Israelis to bomb Palestinian children. From now till the end of time, the Germans need to stop talking about human rights. My family did not participate in doing a Holocaust against anybody. There's an attempt at moral superiority. Yeah. So, for instance, they will lecture us about human rights in Iran, or they lecture us about how Hamas has a bad attitude to women and this and that. Bad attitude to women. Women are dying under American bombs. Okay, you want to criticize the Iranians because they are saying, oh, you should cover your hair. Women are dying under US bombs. I don't want you to tell me about how much hair should be shown or not shown. Okay, you are obliterating people's heads and then lecturing us about the hijab or about whatever. This is the moral decline. The moral decline is they still think they are superior when in fact they are participating in genocides. Again, I want to underline this. This is not an Israeli genocide. This is an Israeli, US, European genocide. I think it's very wrong to consider. We should, poor Benjamin Netanyahu shouldn't bear the whole blame for this. Olaf Scholz, Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, before him Rishi Sunak, Joe Biden, after him Donald Trump, all of them should be sitting in a prison cell in the International Criminal Court.
Hello and welcome back to Palestine Deep Dive. Today I'm very happy to be joined with very special guest, of course, because we always have very special guests. He is Vijay Prashad. I hope I said it correctly.
Absolutely.
Prashad.
Absolutely.
So Vijay is an Indian historian and journalist. He's the author of 40 books. Wow. How many years did it take you to write 40 books?
Let's not get into that because they're not all very big books. So some of them are quite little. For good reason, because I believe people should read. And if you make very fat books, they don't read.
Okay, because recently in We Are Not Numbers, we released our first book ever. And it felt like it took me so long to release the first book, although I didn't write it. So when I hear that someone has written 40 books, it blows my mind. Well done. Good job. So Vijay is also an author of 40 books, as I said, including Washington Bullets, Red Star All Over the Third World, The Darker Nations, A People's History of the Third World, The Poorer Nations, A Possible History of the Global South, and many other books. So let's start, Vijay, with your experience during the past year. How did you feel watching this live stream genocide over the past year and a half? And has the level of barbarity and violence surprised you?
Yes, the level of barbarity and violence has certainly been shocking. I can't say it surprised me, but it's been shocking. It didn't surprise me because, I've been as a correspondent in Iraq, in Syria, but really Iraq was a test case of this. People forget that when the United States bombed Iraq from 2003 onward, it was vicious bombing. They bombed the entire infrastructure of Iraq. They bombed water purification plants, electricity plants. They bombed the airport. They bombed some hospitals. They killed journalists, including Tariq Yaqub of Al Jazeera while he was on air. The violence that the United States inflicted on the Iraqis was extreme. Now, there wasn't access to the images because you didn't have the ubiquity of cell phones and so on. And also the US media was able to quite sufficiently suffocate. In 2023, they almost decided to carpet bomb all of Gaza. In other words, to hit the hospitals, hit the universities, but not hit one hospital, not hit one university, but flatten all of them. And they used 2,500-pound bombs to flatten entire neighborhoods. 2014, they flattened neighborhoods in Jabalia. They flattened neighborhoods in the center of Gaza City. This time, they went after almost all neighborhoods. So it's the scale, not the actual quality of bombing. They've done this before. They've attacked, UNICEF buildings and so on. 2014, they bombed the UNICEF building in Gaza. Not unusual. The quality of the bombing was the same, bomb civilian infrastructure, but it was the sheer quantity. They bombed everything. That shocked me. So it wasn't a surprise. It was a shock that the Israelis decided effectively to just bomb from one end of Gaza to chase the people south, continue to bomb them. There was a lot of expectation that by the time the Palestinian who were fleeing from Gaza City got to Khan Yunis, it would stop. But then they went up to and started bombing Khan Yunis. Then as people went towards Rafah, there was again an expectation. You remember, it's going to stop. I mean, the fact that the Israelis ignored everybody, they ignored all the governments of the world, they ignored, except the United States, because I don't believe the United States and Israel are two countries. I think they are one country. But everybody else was saying, stop, pause, take care. Nothing. Not one day did they stop without wanting to wrest some concessions from somebody or the other. And there was no space for dialogue or negotiation. That was shocking.
And not only that, but the Israeli soldiers, while they were killing and destroying universities and hospitals and schools, they filmed themselves doing that and they bragged about it.
So ugly. It's in my opinion, there's a concept that I very much hope people will start to use. And this is the concept of the international division of humanity. For hundreds of years, in a period of, sort of context of colonialism, there was an understanding that some humans are better than other humans. Let's say Europeans or people who are considered to be white are superior to everybody else. Humanity was divided, and the people who were not considered to be white could be just killed. The first aerial bombardment takes place against Libya in 1911. The Italians just carpet bomb the Libyans and then bragged about it, saying that our aerial bombardment is a good education for the tribes, the Arab tribes in Libya. They learned to behave themselves. 1924, the British bombed the Kurds in northern Iraq. Again, Arthur Bomber Harris writes a report saying, these Kurdish tribesmen, they will learn to fear us. They're a lower form of humanity. When I watched the bombing by the Israelis of the Palestinians, it was very clear that there was an international division of humanity operating. One Israeli child, seemingly, according to some calculation in Washington, D.C. or in Tel Aviv, one Israeli child is worth 10,000 Palestinian children. If one Israeli child is hurt, you are allowed to kill 10,000 Palestinians. That's the attitude of the international division of humanity. And the way the soldiers were displaying children's clothes, breaking toys, and the cruelty, that cruelty, you can't even say it's excessive, because if an international division of humanity is operating, it's normal to treat the children of the savage with absolute contempt. And that's exactly how the Israeli soldiers were behaving. They treated Palestinians as savages. And this itself has to be considered not just a war crime, but this is beyond that. I mean, it's somehow even the term genocide seems too little. This is something beyond that. This is a crime against civilization.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's only Israel who treated the Palestinians as savages, but also most of the West, because they have enabled and participated in this genocide. And that actually takes us to
I'm Jewish, and I've been to Gaza as part of a humanitarian medical delegation. That was about 5 years ago. At that time, Israel was doing the same thing it's doing now, but it was a slow genocide. Now it's full out, the gloves are off, and the mask is off.
I've told many people that our doctors have been arrested, put in jail, and tortured. Israelis are excellent at torturing people. They do it all the time.
A well-known orthopedic surgeon was taken to their torture prison and was raped to death. Raped to death.
Please, just 2 minutes, please. That's it. We're done. Be the Nobel Peace Prize winner.
It doesn't matter. None of that matters.
And we can't even speak up in our own country.
Fascism.
Say this is unusual. This is targeted, obviously.
bombs are killing hospitals, bombing hospitals, and we can't talk about it, where the bombs are coming from. It's embarrassing. It is an absolute disgrace. You cannot do
demonstration.
Even
no signs
you're
being
bringing
held up.
attention to your cause. Stop demonstrating, disperse. It's done. It ends here, or else we start giving warnings, and everyone that's involved here is arrested.
Thank you for vetting the children.
We are here in Washington, D.C. Dozens of doctors gathered in front of Congress. They are calling for the restoration of funding to UNRWA, and they are demanding the release of Dr. Hussam Abu Safia.
And so I am here with my colleagues, both doctors, both psychologists, veterinarian. Yeah, everyone's just here really making sure that the voices of the Gazans and the Palestinians generally aren't forgotten.
I've followed with growing concern what's happening on the ground in Gaza and the West Bank, and like many other Irish people have listened in horror to calls from the President of the United States for the mass expulsion of the Palestinian people from their homes and the permanent seizure of Palestinian lands. Such an approach is a fundamental breach of international law, is deeply destabilising in the Middle East, and a dangerous departure from the UN position of peace and security for both Palestinians and Israelis, and the right of Palestinians to self-determination. The ties between Ireland and the United States are historic and run deep. There are deep bonds between Sinn Féin and people in the United States who supported peace and prosperity in Ireland. These relationships are valuable and enduring. The US is a valued friend of Ireland. Their work in helping to achieve the Good Friday Agreement stands as a clear example of successful US foreign policy. They're an important partner for peace and play a strong role in Ireland's economy. St. Patrick's Day each year is an important moment to reinforce all of those connections. But there is also an onus on us to speak honestly and to act when we believe a US administration is wrong, catastrophically so in the case of Palestine. I've thought deeply about this issue in recent days and listened to many voices inside and outside of Sinn Féin. I've made the decision not to attend the event in the White House this year as a principled stance against the call for the mass expulsion of the Palestinian people from Gaza, something which I believe demands serious dissent and objection. The only route to peace and security is a permanent ceasefire, followed by a negotiated settlement that guarantees peace and security for both Palestinians and Israelis through a just and sustainable two-state solution. That should be the position of the United States. Sinn Féin will continue to engage with the US administration at various levels, with Friends of Ireland on Capitol Hill, with the trade union movement and business leaders both in the United States and right across Ireland. We'll continue our relentless work for a future of peace, progress, stability and prosperity. An Taoiseach will attend the White House for his bilateral engagement with the United States President. It is he who represents the Irish people and will have the opportunity to speak on behalf of Ireland when he meets the American President. He must use this opportunity to reflect the view of the Irish people in relation to Palestine, in support of international law, and to reject threats for the mass expulsion of Palestinian people and seizures of their land. We will be briefing members of the International Diplomatic Corps here in Dublin later today and business leaders north and south in the coming week.
9 countries, when you start looking at it, people will blame Zionists. Well, hang on, Zionism's only been around for 150 years at most. These people were kicked out of 109 countries, 1,030 times over a 2,000-year period. Perhaps there's something wrong with these people. Perhaps they're doing bad things. Perhaps they've tried to undermine every country that ever hosted them. The way when they fled Bolshevik Russia and they got caught out, they fled Russia. Germany invited them into come to Germany, and look what they did to Germany. They tried to completely deplete that. And then when they left there, they sent them down to Palestine. And again, like Adolf Hitler sent them to Palestine in the transfer agreement in 1933. Transferred all their assets, sent them down to Palestine, and the Palestinians took them in, and look what they've done.
So You think it is a kingdom and that the Trump family, got Baron Trump coming up, and then you or Eric, then after you, they will take over because you will collect the money so much from all the countries by the reciprocal tariff, the new terms you have introduced, and you'll bully them all and get that money. And then how will you going to make the America great again? Actually, you are going to make the Trump great again. The Trump dynasties, like Kennedy's, that the last one, you know that how every one of them died or killed or assassinated by your own relatives, by your own family of Zionists, the Jews, the Israelites, how they coaxed the Kennedy to come up there, all these people who were businessmen, and come in an open car with Jacqueline Kennedy, and so that they have him in Dallas, Texas, and a guy on the top of the floor so that he could have his head bare and shoot him at the back so that he never survived. Oh, he didn't. Then after, some time they killed his younger brother too, so that no Kennedy is left. Now all you have is Kennedy's, the book, and that's what you are going to have Donald Trump. Now the reason I am reporting this thing to you is and giving some evidence about the dirt and filth and the cruelty of these Jews is that unless you get rid of these Jews, Hitler was not fooled that he had to do it. And even from the times of memorial, from the prophets, when the 12 tribes walked away and they deceived and cheated and mocked Prophet Moses, they have been doing that since then. How are you going to get out of the DNA and blood? They are liars. They always break their pacts. So ceasefire or no ceasefire, they'll never, ever, ever keep their promise. They will just be doing this thing and cheating you and think the rest of the world is fool. Listen to their own Prime Minister saying what he thinks about the rest of the world and thinks they are the only people who are God's chosen people. Rest are beasts. That includes you, Mr. Trump. That includes you, Joe Biden. Sleepy Joe. That includes you, the British, the French, the Germans, the Europeans, the Arabs, everyone. So you should know that who is your friend and who is your enemy.
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें, उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार ज़रूर